to be his first year as a minor league manager. He was going to be the Cardinals GCL minor league manager today. Grew up in Whitby, played for the Whitby Chiefs. Has gone through what a lot of you guys are going through right now, from 16 all the way through to where he is now. So happy to have Joey on tonight to give us some experiences, share some experiences, have us ask him some questions, and really even talk a little bit about through what he's doing with Blast. I know a lot of you guys are using it right now. We're using it right now. It seems to be helping you guys improve, and want to see and compare how we implement it to what the pros do. So welcome, Mr. Hawkins.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Look forward to talking some baseball. I know we're all dealing with some tough times now. So the fact that you guys got coaches and, some of the people involved with the Mets organizing stuff like this, definitely take advantage of it. And, what we do during this downtime is going to be important as baseball players and as teams. So, yeah, I'm excited to share whatever I can, Blast, recruiting, experiences. But if you got any questions, don't hesitate. Don't be scared. I'm a baseball guy, so I just want to talk baseball tonight and answer your guys' questions if you got them. So don't be afraid to throw them into the chat.
Nice. So you'll probably see between myself, Mr. Went, and Philly, we'll probably go back and forth with some of the thoughts that we've got to start with. But
sure,
take us through. I mean, you've gone through kind of the Whitby Chiefs program, onto playing travel baseball, onto college, and now finish college and coaching in the pros. Take us through a little bit of your time going from playing baseball at 10 to 12 years old through to going to college. When did you realize some of the things that you could compete? What have you learned? If you would reflect back now from your kind of minor baseball / travel baseball era.
For sure, yeah. So like you said earlier, I grew up playing OBA baseball for the Whitby Chiefs. I think probably when I got to around 13, 14 was when I felt like I was pretty dedicated to the game, and I had some good skill sets. So I was looking to take it to the next level and see what I could do with the game. At the time, I was playing multiple sports, which I think is good for everyone. And it doesn't necessarily matter when you decide to stick to just one. So for me, it was going into high school, I decided to stick with baseball, and I played with the Ontario Blue Jays, which is a really good experience. It's a chance for me to gain a lot of exposure and get exposed to some different player development tactics, but also just be around like older guys that were really good baseball players from across the province. So that was a good experience for me. The same time I played for Mr. Wen at Sinclair, which was a really good high school baseball program. So I was lucky to learn, in two different programs at the same time. So that was really good for me. And then ultimately I went on to play at Missouri State University, which is a Division I mid-major down in the Missouri Valley Conference. And ton of good experiences, ton of good stories, playing in regionals, hosting regionals, playing on ESPN, playing alongside first-round picks and stuff like that. So that was a pretty cool ride. But, I think that as baseball evolves, right, like OBA and travel baseball in Canada and not only in the U.S., it's changing. It's much different from when I played. College baseball is changing, professional baseball is changing, but what stays consistent is you gotta love it to get through it. And I say get through it, which isn't necessarily a good sentence because it sounds like you're grinding through it, but basically if you love it, it doesn't become a chore to you, and it becomes a really fun ride. So for me, it was the consistencies with baseball changing. You gotta love it no matter how the game changes, and really hard work is always going to prevail. It's going to take guys to the next level of their potential. And that's kind of been my experience as I've seen the game evolve and change from when I went through the process that you guys are going through.
Was your recruiting process to Missouri State different, or how has it changed from that time to when you were at Jeffco in St. Louis recruiting on the other side of the table?
Great question. So back when I was getting recruited, it was more or less like when you were going into that grade 12 year was when you started getting a lot of heat. So it wasn't like that, I know now 15U, 16U, it starts picking up a lot. It was much different. It was kind of condensed into one age group, it almost felt like. So that's obviously changed quite a bit. Like recruiting is at a faster pace than ever. Recruiting for you guys is way different because you can get exposure to any school in any part of the country because of technology and, PBR and the ability to email any coach at any time. So that's much different. But what stayed the same is like, you got to have good grades. Good grades create better opportunities. That's just the reality of it. And that'll never go away. And obviously your skill sets are important too, when you're evaluating yourself, because you want to know what's a good fit for me, where will I fit in and where will I play? Those things haven't changed, right? Those are always going to matter, but if I could go back in time, I wish I worked a little bit harder in the classroom. Mr. Wendt can probably agree.
Hey, first and foremost, that's my dad, man. I'm Jeff. Yeah, you know what, Joe? I totally remember you, and we sat in the office, and I remember you looked at and you had different schools laid out, and you came to the realization that I think it might have been like your grade 10 math mark wasn't where it should be, and it limited
100%.
you. And it was a Florida school, and you're like, well, I guess that's out.
Yeah, no, I had a really good offer to a really good school in Florida, and I probably could have found a way to do it, but it just seemed like a really rare chance of making it happen. So I kind of had to throw it off the board, which was tough. But luckily, like, there's a lot of different paths for everyone, right? Like I went to a state school, so academic requirements are a little bit different than, let's say, a private school or a junior college. So there's different ways to get down there. And if you do struggle with academics, it's not the end of the world, right? Like, you can go to a JC and you can go to a state school, and there's ways to get better academically, which I did. And it's actually something I'm pretty proud of. Like, when I was a better student when I went to college, which is pretty crazy to think, because, ultimately college should have really challenged me. And I think it did, but I just worked a little bit harder. And I was kind of forced to as well, because you got to have good grades to be on the field.
Did you end up getting any school money?
No, not in the recruiting process. No academic money. But, I think I was on the honor roll a couple of years while I was there, which was pretty cool as a guy that, I struggled a little bit in high school academically. So that was, a little pat on my back, and it felt good.
Let's talk about let's talk a little bit about the earlier years, right? So let's talk about your time, while you were at Sinclair. We'll delve a little bit into your time with the Ontario Blue Jays, but what were some of the building blocks or some of the things that you did to lay that foundation for yourself to know, listen, man, like, baseball is my path, and this is what I'm going to commit myself to, and this is what I need to do to get to the next level? Because I know a lot of the people that you were surrounding yourself with at the time, and a lot of the guys that you played with. What are some of the things that you did? What were some of the people that you cling to, some of the mentors that you had that really helped build that foundation to get you to the next level?
Yeah, you said it, man. Like, surround yourself with good people. I don't know the exact quote, but, smart people say, like, you're kind of a product of the 5 people that you hang around the most. You're kind of an average of that. So, if you're making good decisions with who you hang out with and who you work out with and who you go to the facility with, it's going to change who you are as a player and a person. So I thought that I did that pretty well as a young player at Sinclair and with OBJ. The grade that was 2 years ahead of me at Sinclair was really loaded, and they kind of took me under their wing, and I got to learn a lot from them. And they played for a different organization, but like that didn't matter. Like, we were all on the same path at Sinclair. We all knew what we wanted to do as a team, but also, we wanted to get drafted. We wanted to play in college. So learning from those guys in that situation, and then same thing with OBJ. Like you go into the facility, it's 14U through 18U, and you're around older guys. So I think that was a big thing for me. I saw guys creating a path and going to really good Division I schools or going to really good JCs or getting drafted. And I saw that and I said, I want to do that. But ultimately, like that led to some sacrifices, right? Like I traveled a lot like you guys, and you miss stuff that your regular friends at school get to do more often. But for me, it was fine. Like I wanted to do that. But there was other things, like I had to get a part-time job to drive to Mississauga 4 days a week and pay for gas. That was just what my family dynamic was, but I was totally fine with it. And my parents were straight up with me, but also my coaches with OBJ, they were like, if you want to get the most out of this program, like you got to be in here 4 or 5 days a week getting better. And then my parents said, okay, if you want to do that, you got to get a job and pay for gas, and you can use the car whenever you want. So that was just the reality for me. Like, you want to do this? Here's your path. Go ahead and try and execute it.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of how I'd outline that question.
Yeah, and I think that you really actually you answered it perfectly in terms of laying out some of the things that you had to do. And you use the word, ordinary people, or the phrase ordinary people, and sometimes we tend to not understand that, as athletes, we're not always going to take that ordinary path. We're going to have to make decisions. We're going to have sacrifices. We're going to have to miss out on, grad parties and parties that are going on because we need to focus on what's next. And it gets harder, right? So you had that kind of, let's call that adversity in a sense. And some of the things that helped you get to where you were going to go. And now we flip the switch and we go over to Missouri State, right? Different element, whole new different state. I mean, you did have the opportunity to travel a lot and learn a lot, but walking in there as a young Canadian kid, you're so green to so many different things. What were some of the things that you had to do to say, listen, Joey, man, like you're here for baseball, let's stay focused?
Yeah, it's hard because when you travel with your Toronto Mets teams and you go to the US, like you kind of have a chip on your shoulder, right? Like we're the Canadian team coming down here. Like these are my guys, these are my coaches, this is our uni, like we're representing it. And then all of a sudden you go to your college program, I'm the only Canadian on the team, right? Naturally, people look at you differently. So in a sense, it was like I need to kind of prove first to myself that I belong here. But second, like knowing what got me there was a lot of sacrifice and hard work. And if you think that you get pulled in different directions in high school, wait till you go to college, right? Like you're free. You can do whatever you want after practice, really. If you don't have study hall, you got to make good decisions, right? So it goes back to like when I was a freshman at Missouri State, our junior class was really good. Like they had a really good class, like first rounders. Luke Voigt was in that class, who's with the Yankees now. Like, and don't get me wrong, like they weren't perfect. Like they went out with their friends, we went out with them, but we knew what we were there for, right? Like we were there to play baseball. We weren't there for the social life first. Baseball first, academics, there's a social life involved. So yeah, like you better be ready, right? When you go, like it's go time. Like when I think back to it, like that first fall, we had a first rounder on the mound. Luke Voigt was on our team. We had the National Player of the Year, who was one of our pitchers, who wasn't the first rounder. We had a 10th rounder on the mound. We had a 30th rounder on the mound. Like I'm facing like legit arms, and I'm trying to compete for a spot here. Like if that doesn't smack you in the face, I don't really know what does.
Right.
John Hare?
Talk about John Hare was younger than me. We had Pierce Johnson. So Pierce Johnson was a junior, first round pick that year. So, but yeah, like walking in, facing that talent, like smack in the face. Here you are. You're at a D1 school. You're gonna make it, sink or swim.
Right. And there's really nobody there at the time to throw you a lifeline. Obviously, you have your teammates to lean on, but ultimately, at the end of the day, and these guys have heard this from multiple different sources. It's you. You're your own propeller, and you're the only person that can really pull you forward at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, and like when I got down there, like in my recruiting process, it was like, hey, we got a junior second baseman who's going to get drafted. Like he just hit 420 as a sophomore. He's going to get drafted. He's not coming back. and our shortstop's a junior as well, and he'll be a senior. So you play second, and then when he graduates, you move over to short. Well, second baseman gets drafted, and he's back. He doesn't sign. So it's like, what are you going to do now, right? And then it was our shortstop was ineligible. Oh, here you go. Here's your opportunity as a freshman. And I end up having to compete against a different player. If you look at my stat line, like I had like 50 at-bats that year, right? So, like, what are you going to do? Go cry to the coach because you're not playing well? Like I had an opportunity, and I didn't take advantage of it like I could have. But, man, like, what a good learning experience. Like, thought I was going to get one thing, didn't get it, and then all of a sudden it landed on my plate again.
Right.
So you just never know what's going to happen. You always got to be ready.
And then you compound that with the talent that you just walked through, man. Like, you didn't just talk about average guys at an average school. You're talking, high quality players in a large program that is very well known for their baseball. What's it like when you're facing some of these guys? What's some of the things that are going through your head when you literally look around the corner and there's Luke Voigt?
Yeah, no. I think the coolest part about those guys was like they're your boys, right? Like they weren't big league at the time, so that part's cool. But I think the biggest thing is like when you play those games, it's a scrimmage. I get it, but like if you can get some knocks and you can pick it on defense and run the bases, like you get that sense of like I belong here, right? Like if I can get a hit off Pierce Johnson, like I can get a hit off anybody in the Missouri Valley Conference. So that was kind of like my mindset was like if I can just compete enough against these guys, it's like I'm gonna get better.
Hey Joe, what would be like some of your highlights of your college, and what were some of the foundations that led you into pro ball and getting drafted?
Sure, yeah, it's a good question. So, that first year, really good team. We went to the Miami Regional, right? So, like, if you're a baseball rat, like, you're going to the U, right? You talk about some of the best players in baseball history have played there. So we stroll in and we lose game 1 to Central Florida, and we're in the losers bracket. And Stony Brook was in the regional that year, who had a ton of Canadians. They ended up going to the College World Series, like storybook or fairy tale story there. But anyways, we're in the losers bracket and we got to play Miami at home on ESPN. And I didn't play the first game. Like I was kind of a role player that year. And I'm getting off the bus and our pitching coach is like as grizzly as it gets, right? Like you talk about a guy that doesn't care, like couldn't tell you what Twitter or Instagram is. And he's like, Hawk, you're playing tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. First rounders on the mound. There's like 50 scouts there. Like Theo Epstein's in the house to watch him, who ended up drafting him with the Cubs. Like, this is crazy, but like unbelievable experience getting to do that. We ended up beating him 12-2. So that was pretty cool. And then going through our career, like we had a lot of ups and downs. Our junior year, we finished under 500 with one of the most talented rosters I've ever been a part of. We flipped it around the next year with the same roster and set the school record for wins. We won like 50 games. We were the 8th ranked team in the country, hosted a regional at our home park in front of like 8,000 fans. Yeah, it was crazy. And then we went to Arkansas, played in front of like 15,000 fans, Andrew Benintendi. We had a first rounders on ESPN, like crazy. So that was a really cool experience. And then, yeah, I got an opportunity to get drafted by the Cardinals after and get thrown onto a backfield facing a bunch of guys throwing 95 to 100. Hits you in the face really quick. So, but yeah, those are some good experiences that I'll take with me forever.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, what would you say is your number one characteristic that's allowed you to make all these different stops in baseball, whether it's Division I, you're pro, you're coaching at JUCO, coaching at a Division I, now you're a pro coach. What do you think is the characteristic that you bring every day that's allowed you this opportunity?
So I think the easy one is to say hard work. But like it was fun for me. So it just kind of came naturally to work hard at something I love. But for me, I think what really started separating me was I became a pretty good leader. That 2015 team, my senior year, we had a first round pick, John Harris, to the Blue Jays. Matt Hall led the NCAA in strikeouts and was a 5th rounder and is in the big leagues with the Tigers. Tate Matheny was a 4th rounder. Jake Berger went 9th overall. Like, unbelievable talent, but I was the captain of that team. And that's like, that was a huge honor for me. And I always felt like, you know, if I worked hard and I cared about those guys, I'd get the respect. And I think once I learned that, I took it to pro ball with like young high school picks and young Latin players, trying to help them. And it kind of just parlayed into me eventually coaching and getting a chance to move up the ranks there, because I learned as a player, you know, what leadership was.
Hey, man.
Go ahead, Phil.
No.
I was going to say, how did you know, what's the transition like between, you know, playing 4 years in college with a certain routine to going into pro baseball for the couple of years, playing in the minors? And what's that change like? What are the bigger differences that you noticed?
You know, it's a tough question because the game changes so much. But I think from my experience, it was going from like being one of the biggest team guy grinders, don't really care about myself, just wanted to win, to going into pro ball where it's like you're really playing for yourself at the end of the day. And not only are you playing for yourself, but you know the guys next to you are playing for them, like themselves. So that was like the biggest change. And then I don't care what anyone says. Like, you can say the SEC is as good as like A-ball, but it's not, because when you get to pro ball, you're facing in a 7-day week, you could face 5 SEC Friday night arms, and then a kid from the Dominican that signed for $2.5 million throwing 100, and then a Division II kid who got drafted in the 3rd round is throwing 95. Right? So like the talent is just like unbelievable.
Hey, Joe, I just want to add, you brought up the piece about being a great teammate and being a professional. Maybe share with the guys, what does that mean to you? And, you know, how important is that as you see now you're looking with your coaching hat on, your coaching lens?
I mean, it's the most controllable thing we got. You know, like, you can control your attitude and your effort every day. And guys fizzle out because they don't do that. It's pretty simple. Like, potential is unlimited if you have a good attitude and you work your ass off every day. But potential is capped if you cap your attitude and you cap your effort. Right? Like, if you're not hungry to figure out every little way to get better, you're putting a limit on yourself. So how I look at players now is like, when I talk to them and they're in rookie ball, I say, hey, what's your goal this year? I want to get to A ball. All right, that's good. But like, why don't you want to get to, like, why aren't you trying to work to get to St. Louis? Right? Like, let's broaden those goals. When you talk about being a good teammate and a good professional, like, those things only help you, right? Like, if you're in AAA and you got 2 middle infielders who are really close and you know, there's a call up, there's a guy that's hurt, I don't want a good teammate that's going to go up there and not ruffle any feathers. Same thing in college, right? Like, you go in as a freshman and you're not a good teammate and you don't have a good attitude and effort, you guys fall out quick.
Good point.
Hey, Joe, can you tell us what the difference is when you're coaching in college and you're trying to win for that day, and then coaching in minor league baseball where all of a sudden your focus is not really on that day, it's more on developing players? Is there a different attitude that you have to approach that with?
Yeah, I think in college, it's good to create winners. I think the best pro organizations still find a way to make winning valuable to players. So like showing to them that getting better developmentally every day, on and off the field in the weight room, is winning, right? And showing them the value in that. But the same thing goes in college. Just, I think you can develop more winners in college because they're going to see those results really pay off in the win-loss column. That at the end of the day, that's what college baseball is about. Like, you got to win. And coach is going to find the best 9 guys to win ball games.
That's a good point, man. Something that we may stray away from at times too is the definition of winning, right? We can look at that in many different aspects, but you said it perfectly. You know, on and off the field, in the weight rooms, during practice, things like that. Those are key contributing factors to winning, essentially.
Yeah, like if you've watched The Last Dance thing with Michael Jordan right now,
hey man,
that guy's a winner in everything he does.
hey man.
So, you know, take it how you want to, but like winners are good at everything. They know how to develop, and they know how to turn it on, and they know how to take care of their body. So like if you strive to be elite like that, winning and development should just go hand in hand.
When did you know you wanted to coach?
So probably when I was in college, like I knew I had a lot of interest in coaching then. Probably became a reality when I was a 24-year-old minor league grinder, not playing a lot. My manager at the time was a young guy. I think he was like 29, and he played like 8 years in the minor leagues and never made it. So he was a grinder, and I would just ask him, hey, can I coach first base today? And he was like, yeah, sure, go for it. So I started picking his brain. At that point, I knew like it was probably coming soon. So, but yeah, like my first thought was definitely in college. Like when I started getting into leadership and wanting to be a team captain and stuff was when I really got interested in it.
Hey, that being said, though, your roots in coaching stretch back way further than that. I know you're a player all then, but your leadership and being that great teammate and that like you always carried a professional work ethic. Again, as the teacher, you could always see that was going to play out later in your life.
Yeah, I think good programs are player driven, right? So, you know, as you guys build out your player development model and you players are inside of it, like you guys can coach each other, it's only going to make both of you or all five of you or your whole team better. So I think as players, you always got to ask questions, but don't just limit that to coaches, right? Like if you're a 15-year-old and you're hitting with a 17-year-old kid or a Team Canada player, like get in there and pick his brain, right? Like if he answers your questions, it's going to tell you a lot about his character. And those guys, if there's any guys in this chat that are those older guys, like do it because you guys were in those positions at one point. Like we always said that my freshman class, we always said that we wanted to be like the nicest senior class ever when we got to that. Like we didn't want to be intimidating to these young guys because we knew they could contribute to our team. And it turned out like that senior year, one of our best hitters was a freshman, Jake Berger, who ended up being a 9th or 11th overall pick, right? But we treated him as if he was one of the guys.
What are some of the personal accomplishments or accolades that you have that you kind of hold close to your heart, man? Like, what are some of the things that you've achieved in baseball that you kind of look back and you're like, man, that was it?
So for me, one of the coolest things that I have is that we won with the Ontario Blue Jays. Like we were the first team in quite a while to win back then, which was like, I forget the name of it, ABC World Series qualifier or something like that. We got to go to the World Series in New Mexico and play in front of like 10,000 fans. That was really cool. And then I had a chance to win in college too, right? Like we won championships in college twice. And then I won a championship in Pro Bowl. So I've won championships everywhere I've gone. And then when I got into coaching in college, we won a championship again. So maybe I'm just lucky getting on good teams. But that's pretty cool for me. And then I won the Defensive Player of the Year, the Missouri Valley Conference my senior year. That I hold that one tight to my heart because I worked pretty hard for that.
Good stuff. You know, you did touch on The Last Dance, and you talked about winning, and I'm sure a lot of the guys here have watched that, studied it. I know I have. But, you know, to be a winner and to be successful, you do have to carry yourself a certain way. And you got to have, you know, a little bit of edge to you and a little bit of tenacity and some drive. You did talk a little bit about, you know, some of the things that propelled you forward. But, you know, obviously there was some down days or some days where you didn't feel like getting up and going to the weight room. You know, did you just keep talking to yourself and telling yourself that, listen, man, I've got goals. These are my goals. This is what I want to achieve. This is why I'm doing this. Like, what kind of pushed you forward? And the reason I ask that is because we're here now, right? We're all here now. And I'm looking for things to give to these guys that will allow them to continue to hold that mindset, keep that mindset, and push themselves forward.
Right. So I think when I was a player in like high school, OBJ, and then in college, it was easy to have teammates to lean on. So you weren't going to like not go work out if you had told someone you were going, right? And then you didn't want to be the guy that was like bailing all the time. So for me, like that held me really accountable, especially if I was going to be a guy to speak up in the locker room and call people out, right? Like I got to live up to my own words. But I think as I got into pro ball, it got a lot harder, right? Because you're on your own in the off season and stuff. So it was a good challenge, but man, I think like talking to yourself is good, but like realizing that there's different ways to get better outside of swinging a bat and the weight room, which we're kind of learning right now. You know, reading books, podcasts, like YouTube is like get in a YouTube rabbit hole and watch hitters or pitchers or whatever. Like little things like that can really propel you. But just kind of looking for every edge. But yeah, I think you guys as teammates, like try and hold each other accountable as best you can. I think that's the best path to really being able to get after it every single day.
What kind of things are you reading right now?
So I think as a baseball player, one of the books that I just read is called Obstacle is the Key by Ryan Holiday. I'll put it in the chat for you guys, but really good book. And it's a really easy read. Like it's not a lot of pages. It's short pages, short chapters. Good opportunity to just like look at it through a different lens rather than reading a sports book. So for me, it was just like different ways to look at overcoming tough challenges and turning them into positives, which is what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And then I got a link I'm going to put it in the chat it's a podcast with Rory McIlroy. And he just talks about his routines and like, you want to talk about one of the best golfers and athletes in the world. Like you listen to this podcast and you're like, holy shit, I know why now. Like that guy is so dialed in. Like he gets off his phone at certain times, like he eats certain ways and he realizes like, if I want to do this, like he told himself when he was a young kid, I want to be the best golfer in the world. Right. And he knows like, if I'm going to live up to those words that I've said to people, well, I got to do it. Right. So that was a pretty cool podcast. So I should just throw it in there if you guys want to listen to it.
Cool. Definitely.
Hey, Joe.
Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just going to ask you from like a player development side of things, what are some of the things the Cardinals are doing? What are some of the things your guys are doing right now? What are some of the development things like you're working on, that kind of thing?
So with the Cardinals, like big emphasis on just creating our hitting program. We're looking at basically trying to paint the whole picture for a hitter. We're trying to figure out what hitters need to do to make themselves tick. How do they learn? How do they see things? What makes them better? So we got to make sure we have everything on the table for those guys. So for us, we kind of look at it in two different ways. We look at it from like a swing mechanic development way, and then we look at it from what kind of pitches are you swinging at. So we've laid that out, and that's kind of how we build out our system. But you're looking at blast motion, you're looking at high-speed video, regular video, and then you're looking at, for us, like batted ball data, which would be like exit velocity and launch angles, spray charts, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But a big emphasis too for us is collaborating with our strength and conditioning department and just realizing the importance behind how you move as an athlete first and foremost before you try and set all these maxes as a weightlifter. So we're trying to make sure our guys move really, really well as athletes, build that foundation, tie it into hitting, and then, try and just attack it from there.
How do you guys use Blast?
So how we use it is we try and simplify it the best way we can for our guys. So as coaches, it's our responsibility to essentially understand it from top to bottom. If a player has a question, like we got to be able to answer it. And if we can't answer it, we got to be able to say, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out for you. But from there, like we know some guys understand numbers and we know some guys understand video. We know some guys understand feel. So for us, we got to figure out how that works for the player and then how we present it. So, the big things that we pay attention to on our end, on-plane efficiency, early connection at impact is what we're really looking at, which for me, it's just how is your swing moving in space, to simplify it. And we want that swing to move in space really well. So, but yeah, those are the three main ones we're kind of diving into and trying to explain to our hitters on a daily basis.
Are there challenges to the understanding of the metrics to most of the guys you're working with right now? Do they get it, or does it take a little bit longer for some guys, or are some guys just not into it at all?
So obviously, if you're dealing with like a engineer from Stanford, he's probably going to understand a little bit quicker than a high school draft. But ultimately, we're able to get through to guys, I think, because we compare it with video. So then we give them a chance to say, hey, this is what it looks like on video when we talk about this. Sometimes we don't even bring up the numbers. We just use the video, and especially if they're improving and making solid adjustments that are trending upward. But yeah, like we find any way to help these guys, because when they get to St. Louis, like there's a lot of data and there's a lot of advanced scouting that they have to be able to understand. So our job as minor league coaches, we got to get them ready for that. I think we got a question in here. What do you find more beneficial, video or blast? It's a good question. For me, I would say video is 1A, blast is 1B. Put them together and figure out what's best for you as a hitter. Because we have hitters that just like blast and we have hitters that just like video, and we have a lot of hitters that like both. So you got to paint that full picture when you're evaluating yourself as a hitter.
We got another one that just kind of came to us. Who's the best player you've coached and why?
Ooh, best player I've coached. So in college, coached the 5th rounder to the Rays, a pitcher. He was really good. And then in pro ball, I would say, that's a tough question. I think a better question is who have I played against that's the best player, and that would be Vlad Guerrero Jr. And then Ronald Acuna. So, yeah, like we had some good players last year. We actually had a Canadian on our team that was a Dominican background, went down to the DR at 15 to sign. So he's with us, and he's a really good player. So I actually sent him that podcast as well. He's one of the most driven guys I've been around.
Quebec kid?
Yeah, he's from Montreal. Francisco Hernandez.
Hey, speaking of Canadians, do you use Richard Stubby Clapp as sort of a mentor of yours, being another Canadian?
Yeah.
Being a guy that I competed against my whole life, and he's my dad's favorite player. What's he like to be around as being a Canadian? Does he sort of take you under his wing?
Great dude. We do a cool thing in spring training called Cardinal Connection. So if you're a minor league coach, you go up to the big leagues for 2 days. So I got to be around him a little bit, which was awesome. But like the best part of him is he's the same guy every day. And when you play 162 over 6 months, to have a guy that brings energy and that is in a good mood is so key. And he's that guy. Plus, he's also a tremendous coach and really smart when it comes to infield play and game management. So yeah, he's, obviously I wish I was around him more, but the times I've been around him, just a really good guy.
Hey, Joe, I just want to go back to the blast because I saw one of the kids' questions.
Yeah, I saw those.
Yeah, how did Blast come to the Cardinals organization? Probably from Jeff Albert, right, I assume. And how do you use it? Do you use it in game data, when you're in the Gulf Coast and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so Jeff Albert came over from the Astros. He was their hitting coordinator over there for quite a while, and he was kind of like the pioneer to blast motion in professional baseball. Yeah, we use it in the games pretty much every level now. It was in the works this year to be on the bat for every player in a game. But last year in the Gulf Coast League, yeah, our guys wore it every day. For us, that creates the baseline, right? We want to make adjustments in the game. That's what it's all about. We don't want to be 5 o'clock hitters or cage hitters. So we want to make sure we know what they're doing in the game. And then when we go to build out a plan for them on a daily basis, we know what we're striving to fix and get better at. So yeah, good question. But yeah, we use it all the time.
Another one from the chat. What's the most important quality when you were a recruiting coordinator that you were looking for in players?
Yeah, so if I'm just going to be blunt with you guys, you got to be good enough, right? I'm not going to recruit bad players. Scouts aren't going to scout bad players. So that should reflect how hard you work on a daily basis, which is one of the first questions I asked their coaches and then also them, right, to see how honest they are with themselves. And then, but recruiting is about getting as much information as you can as a coach, and it should be your guys' goal as players to get as much information to them that you can. For me, I loved kids that were proactive. So if I was trying to get in touch with a kid, it wasn't a battle. If I asked them for video, like that video was either texted to me or emailed to me, within 24 hours. Like if I wanted a transcript, it was in my email within a week, right? Because I know you got to go through your guidance counselors and stuff like that. But proactive players are the best players to recruit. And I figured that if I was recruiting someone that's proactive, they want to be here. And then when they get here, they're not going to be a problem.
Joey, I got one for you. What
Yeah.
kind of twofold to that question? What's something that a player's done where you've just been like, you know what? Nope, don't want them. Just X them off, right? And I'm not talking like, went 0 for 3, but like, character, something from that side of things.
Yeah. So one big one that I still remember was we were recruiting this kid and we were the first team on him, and he made it known to us that really mattered to him. And we treated him really well in recruiting. We were calling him all the time and we made a really good offer to him. And we had, at the time, I don't remember the rules exactly, but whatever, like September 1 was when you could start coming on campus, right, for visits. And we had him scheduled, and then 5 days before, it was kind of like radio silence. And I figured some other teams started getting in there, and there was, good players in there or good teams in there. But yeah, his communication failed, and it was just like I just wasn't a fan anymore. So I could have easily stuck with it, but I called him and I said, "Hey, like we're out. We're not doing this anymore. You don't have the money." And basically, what happened was like his recruiting process like kind of fell apart a little bit, and he tried circling back with us, but like we were out on him. It was just a bad look because we didn't know. We started recruiting him again. What was going to happen next?
So from him just kind of going silent, right? Like
Yeah,
if this guy hadn't called you and said, "Hey, you know what? Like,
hey,
just upfront and honest," might have
yeah,
given
like
shot.
Right. And my biggest advice, like if you have the luxury to be recruited by multiple schools, like respect that coach's time, right? Like those guys are trying to feed their families and put dinner on the table. So, and they want you, right? Like if they're calling you, they care about you and how good you are as a player, and that you're going to reflect their program one day. So it's okay to be honest if you have zero interest in going there. Like those guys will move on. There's other good players, right? But to just kind of like beat around the bush and leave a coach hanging is tough. And it happens more than you think. But the best thing you can do in recruiting is be honest with yourself and be honest with the guys that are recruiting you.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thank you.
Couple we got here. What do you guys do from a mental training perspective?
Yeah, so that's always evolving, honestly. We just brought on a Navy SEAL who now has his degree in psychology, who's going to be implementing a system across the board for us from the big leagues down. A big thing he talks about is breathing, like just controlling your breath, teaching yourself how to do it when you're in the most relaxed setting in your room, to teaching them how to do it when they're out of breath from conditioning, teaching them how to do it when they're on the field. So I thought that was kind of interesting. We often neglect that part, but I'm intrigued to see what he does moving forward. I think it's something that we need to improve on as an organization. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. But I think for you guys as players, that are in high school, there's a good book called Mindset that is a good read for you guys if you're trying to learn about the mental game. Mind Gym's also a really good book if you're trying to learn. And then there's plenty of podcasts out there that are talking about it with players and different athletes around the world. So just, research it. Find ways, find your routine, and always work on that side of it.
Question came in here. In your opinion, what's the main difference between Division I and Division II as seen by a scout? I think that's kind of an open-ended question in the sense where, evaluating a player is evaluating a player, right? It's what a guy does in between the lines and obviously off the field. So,
I think here's the biggest thing: like, good players put up numbers. All right, so if you're at a Division I or Division II, you got to put up numbers if you want to get drafted. But ultimately, right, like Emlo can talk about, like we're looking at tools on the pro side. But we talk a lot about makeup too, right? Like if we're gonna bring in a player from, a mid-major D1 or a D2 school, we got to have good makeup there because we want them to impact our culture too. I'm not saying if you have good makeup, you get drafted. Right? Going back to my first point, got to put up numbers. But there's plenty of D2 guys that get drafted. I remember, my first year, first team I played on in pro ball, we had a player from LSU that played in the College World Series. I played at Missouri State, which was a mid-major school. We had a player from NAI school, a player from a JUCO, and a player from a D2 school. So there you go. That's every level. And high school players, obviously, and, Latin American players. So they come from everywhere. Good players, if you're good, they find you.
No question.
I was in Lewiston, Idaho, second week of February, watching people. So
yeah, exactly.
Lewiston, Idaho is not fun.
Yeah, exactly.
But good players there.
I don't think I'm ever going there, but there's good players there.
Yeah.
Got one more here, and then we could probably kind of wrap it up. What kind of routine, and is it different from a pro side than a college side in terms of guys keeping notes on hitters or pitchers, doing some self-analysis? Are they keeping log books? And I would say probably this is more from a college perspective than from a pro perspective, but would be interested to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, every player is different, right? Like I don't sit here and staple guys down and say you have to write about every at-bat. But I'll definitely show them the value in it. And if they see value in it, then it's worth it. If a player doesn't see value in it, I'm not going to force them to do something that doesn't necessarily like. So yeah, it varies. Like we had some guys at SLU that did that from time to time. A big thing for us was just setting up a system for them. So we had like Synergy video, which gave us a video of all of our opponents and then the game we just played. So we typically made like Monday a big video review day if guys wanted it. And they could kind of self-assess and talk about the weekend. And then the pro game, you see it a lot more. A lot more guys taking notes, especially as you get up in levels and the talent's so good. They're just trying to find that edge of how guys pitch them or vice versa, right? How hitters try to attack the pitchers. So, but yeah, there's plenty of guys that are out there studying it. But I think a good thing to remember is to not confuse yourself. As a hitter, pitchers make mistakes over the middle of the plate, like hit mistakes in the middle of the plate and be ready for those mistakes. So typically, like how we look at it, when you hit a ball in play, like, did you swing at a strike, right? Did you hit it hard? Were you on time to hit? Like, if you're asking yourself those questions, that's way better than like, hey, this guy threw me a 2-1 breaking ball and I rolled over. Right. So I think that's a good thing to approach it as a young hitter.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, just one question I was thinking about here. What would you suggest, what would be a good routine for these guys to be working on right now where, we're all at home and we're kind of making do and, from whether it's a college coaching perspective, pro perspective, it doesn't matter. What do you suggest for these guys?
So I think a cool thing that you guys could do, as most of you will go play college baseball, is try and set your days up like you're a college athlete, right? So if you don't need a weight room to get better at strength and conditioning, you need to get better at moving, right? If you are lucky enough to have weights, let's try and move some weights in the morning, right? Let's try and attack some academics for 2-3 hours and put my phone away. Let's try and get really good at eating. Like, let's eat. Let's get big. Like, go to college. Kyle, you talk about going back to those days. Like, Luke Voigt was a monster, right? Like, those guys are big at that level. So get used to eating, right? Eat a good lunch. Then in the afternoon, like, work on baseball. You guys have Blast Motion. You got a cell phone. Blast Motion and video, right? Get connected with your coaches. Get connected with people around the game. Then go back to the books, right? You got to go to study hall when you go to college, and that typically happens at night. So there you go. Knock out a couple hours, put the phone away. If you don't have homework, there's some books and podcasts that we talked about. Get that in, and then boom, you got a couple hours to chill and play Fortnite.
I would say that in itself kind of outlines a really good productive day for guys, right? I mean, there's a lot to be achieved there. And now being able to use kind of time as the stepping stone, we've got lots of it. So there's no reason why we can't fill those days up with such items, right? I like that you talked about movement. I think that movement's huge, plays a huge factor in progress and, changing and adapting your body. So that one really stuck out to me. And then the whole putting the phone away, right? We're all guilty of it. There's, our whole lives are on our phones, but
right here, I'm guilty of it, trying to get better at it during the downtime.
That's right. My wife put a timer on my phone, so at 6 o'clock, all the apps shut off for the day.
There you go. I need that.
So, but those are quality components, and then combat that with some family time too, right? We're not, I hope that we never get such time like this back again. So we've got to be able to do those things, because all of a sudden, we're in fast forward, baseball season's here, and then guys are going away to college, and then it's fall season, and life just kind of picks back up again. So
good time too to like tap into your recruiting, right? Like, what are you looking for, right? Do some research. Great time to send emails, because coaches aren't going out and watching right now. So every college coach I've talked to is just, they're on the computer. They're looking at videos. So whether the guy emails you back or not, like, it's not going to hurt you. So this is a good time to figure that out and take a look into it. But yeah, like, what I'm getting at is, like, make a routine, get better every day, use the Blast Motion, use the video, use the movement stuff, get better as an athlete, get better as a student. And you'll come out of this on top. And that's what baseball, when we get back, it's going to be about people that took advantage of this.
No doubt. Pudge, what do you got, man?
Hey, hey, Joey.
Hey.
A lot of our program is based on, really good warm-ups, especially when we get back into the gym from the fall season. The first 2 months of our program is all weight room, and that's it. If they're doing baseball stuff, it's on their own time. But I base my program on a lot of mobility, a lot of emphasis on the warm-ups and making sure you're activating your body, feeling all the right muscles when you're supposed to work it. I do my best to explain, when we do exercises, why we do them, where you should feel it, as opposed to just lift this weight as heavy as you can and don't worry about where you feel it, just lift it, and a lot of the talks I have, regardless if it's at the beginning or even till now, it's, oh, I'm only at this weight. I'm like, don't worry about it, but where do you feel it? Are you seeing progress? Are you eating enough? Are you hurt anywhere? A lot of the emphasis is on making sure that your form is good, you're moving really well, your mobility and flexibility is there, because at the end of the day, strength will take you so far, but if you can't move well, number one, you're prone to injury. Number two, you probably can't perform at your best because you're really stiff, whether it's with your throwing, your running, your hip mobility. But what can you tell these guys when it comes to, especially with form, when they're lifting, their warm-ups, the mobility stuff that I'm supersetting their main workouts, their main lifts with, and obviously their warm downs and their foam rolling and the stretching on top of that.
So there's one player that can never play, and that's an injured player. Those guys don't play, right? So all that stuff you talked about is about being healthy. And if you're healthy, you got a chance to get better, you got a chance to play. So hurt guys are never on the field. If you have the mindset and the strength to realize that movement and foam rolling and mobility is just as important as the 100 swings you're going to take, you're going to see your career, your swing, your development really take off. It's also another way to trick yourself, right? So often we as hitters or pitchers, we hit or we throw a bullpen and it didn't go how we wanted. So we spend the next 30 minutes thinking about it. And then the next 30 minutes before my next bullpen or cage session, thinking about it again. It's an opportunity to realize, like, okay, I got to lock in on mobility. I got to lock in on movement prep. I got to lock in on foam rolling right now, because that's what matters. And the best players, like, focus on what they're doing right now. You know, I like Tommy Edman, who's with us in the big leagues, is a small athlete, but watching him get ready to hit in the cage, like, he's on the foam roller and stretching for like 20 minutes, just locked in, doing his own thing to hit in the cage. And he doesn't get mad when he mishits a ball, because he's just focused on trying to get better. So I know it's long-winded going off of what you were asking, but, like, if you can realize that priorities in this game, like being healthy and moving well, is all, like, that's it, right? Like, if you're injured, you're not going to play. So that's kind of how I would approach it.
No, that's great. And, you know, and I tell a lot of these guys too, that when you are doing your warm-ups and your mobility and your foam rolling, especially before a game or practice, that's like a really good time to kind of get yourself mentally, you know, prepared for what you're about to do, especially if it's a game. You know, a lot of guys, their warm-up is just jog out to center field, you know, do the mobility stuff, like whatever their team does. But they don't realize that time, yeah, you're going through the motions because your body knows how to do it, but your mind should be kind of preparing for it, or use that time to not only get your body prepared, but get your mind prepared. And a lot of the talk you've had today is about, you know, not only the movement stuff but it's the mind. And I think utilizing that time before a workout, or even a lot of these, well, mainly these guys will work out after they do their pitching and their hitting and stuff. So if they had a shitty time in the cage or a shitty bullpen, they can kind of use that time in the weight room to kind of think about it, but also, again, prepare their minds for how they're going to get better, you know. And sometimes working out or doing the mobility and stretching is when you're going to have that aha moment, be like, oh shit, this is what I may have done. And, you know, look forward to your next time out where you can kind of work on that as you're getting better in other things.
Yeah, like, I mean, you said it, focus, right? And at the end of the day, we can't play this game forever. So you want to use baseball as a platform for what's next in life. So if you have the ability to focus on things that are just off of the field, just think about when you grow up and you got bills to pay and you have a job, there's going to be that glue work that necessarily doesn't matter to some people, but you've got to get it done to be successful in life. That's kind of what mobility and foam roll and all that stuff might look like to you. But if you just do it and do it and do it and do it, you'll be successful. And doing things like that inside the game of baseball is only going to make you better whenever you leave the game as a player, which ultimately it happens to everybody. So the elite people, like, they approach everything the same way. Like, they want to be the best. Like, look at MJ, right? He realized he needed to start lifting weights. He started lifting weights and he changed his game even more.
Hey, Joe, it's interesting, you know, with you and Pudge just speaking there, you reminded me of a comment you made a couple weeks ago. And you were talking about major league hitters, and they swing with their A swing, or whether it's pitching in the bullpen, the vast majority of time. It's not one great swing comes out of nowhere. And you also talked about how every major league player has to prepare to make sure he's giving his A swings every time he's in the cage, every time he's on the tee. And that's where all the movement prep and the lifting and the foam rolling, and that prepares you for that. And I think that's so important, because I think it's something as young players and our Mets guys maybe don't have the value for that yet, or maybe the maturity to see how much that's important. But I remember, like, when you said it the other day, that made so much sense, to me. And it's something I think as young players we got to take away. We have to take that with us.
Yeah, like the game's always going to fizzle people out, right? So you go around a major league cage, like they're in the big leagues for a reason. They're so detail oriented. They don't take a swing off. Like that's their job, their profession. So, they've probably been like that for a long time. And it's your chance to kind of figure that out as a player, right? Like when I pick up the phone and call a coach, if I'm a recruiting coordinator and they talk about your makeup, like, what if you're a guy that just takes foam rolling like it's nothing, or mobility? It's going to get to that college coach eventually. It always finds a way to. So always keep that in the back of your head. Like I always tell my guys, they're always being evaluated. So just get used to it. Like if you're doing mobility, like someone's watching you and someone is going to have an opinion on it. So try and do it the best that you can. Mm-hmm. Whether you don't want to do it, you do want to do it. Do it the best you can, because someone's always evaluating you. Someone is creating an opinion of what you are doing right now.
Also, and on top of that, you also talked about Luke Voigt being a monster. But a lot of these guys, they're going to get to the next level at college, whatever division they're at, and they're going to notice that now they're playing against the best of the best at that level. And a lot of the guys, especially from the guys down south, or just American boys in general, they're all that much bigger. And a big thing I'm talking to a lot of these guys about is eating more, doubling their food, tripling the food. They send me pictures of their meals, and, I'm like, double it, triple it. Like, what? I'm like, dude, trust me, you got to do it. And right now at this age, especially, there's a lot of 14, 15, 16-year-olds listening right now. What can you say about the nutrition side, and especially when it gets to the pro level, but all the way through?
Hey, Joe, you can speak from a personal level, because I remember you were about 125, 30 pounds in grade 9.
Soaking wet. No, it was always an issue of mine as a player until I got to college, where I really started eating more. But when you're young, like, you have the luxury to pretty much eat anything as long as you're like working out. And obviously as you get into pro ball, it's going to change a little bit, and we feed them. So we're kind of controlling their intake of what they're eating for the most part. But yeah, like you said it, like eat a lot. And, if you're eating a lot and you're working out and you're active, it's going to pay off eventually. My advice too is, like, if you feel like you're behind and you're not gaining weight, it's going to come. You just can't give up, right? Like, you got to keep eating. It's going to come. Like, I was that guy. Like, I always felt like I was behind the ball, like 130 when I was grade 9. Then I got to my senior year and it was like $165 and everyone else was 180. Then I got to college and I was 175 and everyone else was 190, right? So, like, just keep eating, keep working out. That matters. Stay healthy. Like, you can control it, right? Like, it's a choice. Eat those PB&Js.
Awesome, Joey. I think with that, we'll wrap it up. Don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I think this was awesome. I think the things that you've talked about will hopefully resonate with most of our guys, or all of our guys. A lot of things that we've been kind of harping on the last 6 months. So
yeah, I'll throw my email.
Throw that Twitter handle in there, buddy. You're a star on the Twitter.
I'll throw the Twitter in there too. All right, you guys can message me if you need anything, want to talk shop, or need podcasts or books.
Joey, thank you so much.
For sure,
Thanks,
guys.
Man.
Best of luck to everyone. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
See you, Joe.
See ya.
Thanks, Joy.